I confirm the webcast has commenced.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of full council on Monday the 7th of December 2020. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the chairman know that you wish to speak by using the chat function. The chairman will introduce speakers in the order that the request to speak has been made, unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video feed to reduce any interference on your audio connection. Please bear in mind that there may be a slight delay in speakers hearing you. When referring to a report, please quote page and paragraph numbers. Members, we do not have any business for private session this evening. However, please can I remind you that should we need to go into private session, it is your responsibility to make sure that your connection and venue is private. If you lose connection at all at any point in the meeting, please rejoin the meeting and we would readmit you. If you experience any difficulties, please can you email me. Please use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of CLLR before their name, with the exception of chairman and vice chairman. They have a prefix. There are officers in attendance and they are identified with a prefix of officer. Officers will only speak at the invitation of the chairman. We have a minute taker and a meeting facilitator for this meeting. Chairman, I can confirm that we've had apologies from the following members: Councillor Tom Walsh, Councillor Joe Beavis, Paul Houston, Stevie Hicks and Dean Wallace both give their apologies for lateness. They should be joining us as soon as possible. And we've also had apologies from Councillor Renman. I can confirm that the meeting's quorum and may proceed. I now hand over to the chairman, Mrs. Kilmartin. Thank you, Mrs. Kilmartin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Angela Kilmartin, and I'm the chairman of this council, and I'll be chairing this meeting of full council. I'd like to open this virtual meeting of full council by welcoming all the members present and the public who are viewing this meeting via the council's YouTube channel. I'm being assisted, as you've probably found already, by a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. So, of course, I can't see all members, so can I ask that you use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak or raise a procedural point? Members, can I clarify that during this meeting, when asked for agreement, silence will be taken as assent on those items for noting. Where a vote is required, these will be conducted using a roll call. At the appropriate time, each member will be called in turn to indicate their vote, and at the end, I will be assisted by the monitoring officer in determining the outcome. This is not a recorded vote, and the votes will not be recorded as part of the minutes to this meeting. If on any item before this meeting members require a recorded vote to be undertaken, then this must be requested in accordance with the provisions set out within the Council's constitution. We have 3 hours, members, set aside for this meeting, and I'd be extremely grateful if members could keep their debates concise and not double up on a point that's previously been made, in order to assist with ensuring that we do try to conclude this meeting within the time allocated. Thank you very much. So I'll now proceed to the first item of business, which as usual is apologies for absence. So I've received apologies from the following councillors. That's Councillors Sandham, Tom Walsh, Joanne Beavis, Paul Houston, Steve Hicks will be late, Dean Wallace will be late, and also Councillor Raymond, who is ill. So now, do I have any further apologies to note, please?
Chairman, you have Councillor Sandham in attendance, so she is present for this meeting.
She's present.
All other members that you have given are correct, and we have no further apologies for absence. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, thank you. No further apologies to note. So with no more, I'm going to move to item 2, which are minutes of the previous meeting. Now for this item 2 on your agenda, I'll be seeking your agreement. So I'm looking for silence to be your assent. Now, do any members have any objection to the approval of those minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of Full Council held on the 5th of October 2020? I can't see
Madam
any.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, yes,
Just
who's
a
that?
very quick one, Madam Chairman. I note that my questions to Councillor Smith and Ricky have been recorded, but the officer did not record in the actions. The Councillor Ricky offered a written response to me. Please, could this be added?
Thank you. I'm sure that's been noted. Anybody else who'd like to bring something up? Unmute your microphone and tell me what it is, please. No others. I can't see any others. All right. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. And I've got a large line of people, and I'm actually going to start with myself. This is a very unusual occasion. So I'm going to declare a non-pecuniary because I'm a member of Witham Town Council, which has entered a reply to agenda item number 8. So all these people, yes, thank you very much. So I'm going to start with Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Halistair Town Council and Chair who have submitted a response for item 8 on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one I've got is Councillor Butland. You've written DOI, yes?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I declare an interest both as a member of Essex County Council and of Great Notley Parish Council, specifically Great Notley Parish Council, which has responded to the consultation on item 8.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Got quite a few, I'm afraid. Item 8, the planning delegation, Rivenall Parish Council submitted a representation. I'm both a member and chairman of Rivenall Parish Council. I'm also an ordinary member of 3 organisations who made consultation responses: CPRE, the Better Braintree Facebook page, and Witham and Countryside Society. In regards to item 11 on woodlands, I was previously employed in the planting and management of woodlands. I no longer am remunerated, but I still have an involvement with woodlands. And in item 14, any matters within the cabinet reports that come up for Essex County Council, of which I'm a member.
That's all. Thank you very much. Now I've got Councillor Thorogood.
Yeah, just in regards to agenda item number 9, statement of licensing policy, I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest because I am a BDC licence holder for a private hire taxi company. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just a couple, really. Like Councillor Abbott, I'm a member of CPRE that's made a response to the planning, and I am personal licence holder for item number 9.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, again, and in item 8 of the agenda, the review scheme of delegation, I am Vice Chairman of Great Notley Parish Council, which has submitted a response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Wright.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest on item 8 as Deputy Chairman of Rivenall Parish Council, who submitted a response, and I'm also on Better Braintree Together Facebook page.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Member of Essex County Council from Cabinet Reports.
Thank you. Councillor David Hume.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Item 8, NPI, as a member of Halistair Town Council, who sent
Lovely.
representation.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Weeks.
Hello, just want to declare an interest as member of Witham Town Council and Facebook member of Better Braintree.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Tom Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I think you may have a couple at the top of the chat function as well. But I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 8 as a member of Great Notley Parish Council who contributed to that consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Hensman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, non-pecuniary interest in that I'm also a licence holder on Braintree District Council for item 11. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Anybody else? I think
Chairman.
Yes.
You also have Councillor Van Dalken and Councillor Pell who's indicated.
Right. So can I have those then, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I need to declare an NPI in the on the planning delegation item number 8, as I responded to the consultation as a councillor. I will remain for the discussion and vote on the recommended decision.
Thank you. Number Councillor Pell, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have an NPI in item 8 as a member of Halstead Town Council who have responded to you. Thank you.
Anybody else? No, it's all gone nice and quiet. So, there are no more declarations, and I'm now going to proceed to item 4, public question time. Members, for item 4, there are no registered speakers for this evening. So I'm now going to proceed to the next item of business, which is announcements and statements from the chairman and the leader of the council, agenda item 5. And I'll begin. This is about Councillor Doug Rice. Members will already be aware that Councillor Rice, who was a former Braintree District Council councillor, passed away in October. Councillor Rice served on the council during the 1990s until 1999, and again from 2003 to 2011, representing Braintree West Ward. Members, I'm going to pause my announcements at this stage to allow members who have contacted me to speak in Doug Rice's memory. So I'm going to start first by asking Councillor Mann to say a few words, and may I thank Councillor Mann for representing me at Councillor Rice's funeral. Thank you, Councillor Mann.
For the majority of his time on this council and for 12 years on Essex County Council, Doug served as a Liberal Democrat councillor. He decided to join the Labour Party, and we were happy to welcome him to our group on this council. Now, that was a very easy decision, given the fact that we already knew that he was a fine man and an approachable and an effective councillor. He was, as anyone who has anything to do with Braintree knows, extremely popular in his ward, and his political transition was easy because it was clear that many voted for him because of his sterling personal qualities rather than his political label. He was and became a friend to many, to me and to Tony, who also wishes to be associated with these remarks. Now, as a young man, Doug was a very capable sportsman, 4-minute miler, for example, cricketer, footballer, but he applied in later life his energy to council work. He became a councillor not from political passion, but because he wanted to be of service to his local community, and this he did with great distinction. Towards the end of his life, he also acted as carer to his extended family, and this was typical of him. He battled bravely with ill health himself, and the very last time that I met him, although he was very unsteady on his feet, he was out shopping for his neighbours. He was very much a man for others, And I think that's a good way for us all to remember him.
Thank you very much then, Councillor Mann. And so Councillor Mrs. Pell would like to say something too. Mrs. Pell?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Like David, I had known Doug for a long time. I used to sit next to him, or he would sit behind me. He was such a likeable person, and he used to make you laugh. And in these days, if somebody to make you laugh means a lot to you. And in those days, when we first started out, we had audience come to our council meetings, and he often used to bring his son, who used to sit in the audience, and my husband would sit in the audience, and that. So we all got to know one another quite well. The last record I have of him in Braintree District Council's building was when we had a member seminar when we had all been re-elected, and I saw him standing at the reception desk, and I knew that he knew people like Tony Everard and David Mann, and I invited him in because we was only having our coffee, and he said, "Oh no, I can't do that, I'm not supposed to." I said, "No, it's fine, just come in and come and say hello." And it was lovely, and I know how much Tony enjoyed seeing him. I'd meet him in town. He used to spend quite a bit of time with his wife, and he'd go into the cafe in Quadrant, and we could sit and chat there. But every time you saw him, he'd have a story, and he would really make you laugh and smile. And I am sorry to see that he's gone, and I think that we all send our wishes to his wife, Pat, also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Pell. And Councillor Butland would like to come in next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On behalf of this side of the chamber, I would like to add our condolences as well to Doug's family. Doug was a very, very conscientious local councillor. If he got his bit between his teeth on a subject, he was like a terrier, and he would keep at it. But always, as both Councillor Mann and Councillor Mrs. Pell have said, with the most good humour and good nature. And we on this side will also miss him.
Thank you very much. And so on behalf of all the members, I'd like to record, if we would, our condolences to Mr. Rice's family.
Apologies, Chairman, for interrupting. Councillor Abbott would also like to speak.
Councillor Abbott, yes, you come now.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, from our group's perspective, we would like to send our condolences too. I mean, obviously, I knew Doug through many years of being a member of the council. Always found him extremely approachable, and as others have said, incredibly dedicated to causes which he wanted to raise. I won't say any more than that because I know that David in particular knew him far better, and I thought he was very eloquent what he said. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. So after that rather sad occasion, I'm going to continue with the announcements. So the next one is quite joyous, and it's the Queen's Birthday Honours. The Queen's Birthday Honours were announced in October, and these awards recognise the outstanding achievements of people across the United Kingdom. And I'm pleased to announce that 3 residents from our district received the awards as part of the honours list. The awards include an OBE, an MBE and a BEM. And if you want further details of who these excellent people are, they're available on our website. Then I'd like to talk about Essex Playing Fields Association. Does a year ever go by when we don't sweep the board on this? In October, I attended the Essex Playing Fields Association presentation evening via Zoom, of course, and I'm delighted to announce that the Braintree District received numerous awards, including, get this, 15 gold awards, 13 silver awards and 8 certificates of merit. And Braintree District Council was also the winner in its class for Mill Chase Halstead. Very well done to absolutely everybody, and of course the Halstead as well. For myself, I've had actually a reasonably busy time. I've made 2 videos, and that is thanks to Councillor Hensman, who has been out come rain or shine with me, despite me sitting in a holly hedge at one point as well for the Christmas message. And this Councillor Hensman's skills are very gratefully received. Thank you. I did Remembrance, and I've done Christmas, which you'll get to later next week. Now, I'd like to ask those of you, well, all of us, and of course many people around the country, send Christmas cards to the people we work with. And Braintree District Council the members are no different in this. But I'd like to ask if you'd, instead of sending cards this year, which is so much more difficult, would you like to put some money into the chairman's charities? So ring up the civic office and say how much you'd like to put in. And just to remind you what my charities are: music and medicine, and music is Whittam Choral Society, and medicine is Marie Curie Nurses. Both excellent ones. So that's all of me. And now Councillor Butland, leader of the council, can make his announcements. Thank you, Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no statement to make on this item of the agenda.
Right. Well, then I'm going to proceed to item 6, which is statements by councillors. Members, there are 2 statements to be made this evening, and they'll be given in the order received by the council as detailed on the agenda. I would ask that the statements are confined to 5 minutes, and I may exercise my discretion to allow additional time if the statement is complex or detailed, but I'd love it, the shorter the better. Members, as set out on the agenda, in accordance with the council's constitution, once the statement is made, only the leader of the council or the relevant cabinet member or the committee chairman may respond. Can I please remind members that there is no debate on this and no questions on these statements? So the first statement is by Councillor Butland. Councillor Butland, would you like to make your statement, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, on the 14th of April 2018, I opened an email from a member of the public. Little did I know that that simple action was to trigger a series of events that have led me some 2.5 years later to make this statement this evening. The email I received alleged misconduct by a member of this council concerning a grant under the councillor grant scheme. Given that the councillor concerned was a member of the Conservative group and that the allegation was of a potentially serious nature, I immediately forwarded the complaint to the council's chief executive. As a result, an independent inquiry was carried out by Freese LLP, a firm of solicitors. They reported their findings to the council in January 2019. The full report is now in the public domain and on the council's website. The outcome was that the investigating officer came to the view that the councillor concerned had acted improperly, and I quote, in order to secure an advantage to herself, close quote. The councillor concerned resigned from the council on the 1st of February 2019, and as a result, the outcome of the investigation was not published at that time, and the matter did not proceed by way of a standards hearing. Following her resignation, the former councillor submitted a complaint to the council's monitoring officer against myself, alleging that I had A, influenced the investigation of the allegation against her, B, bullied her during the investigation, C, intimidated her during the investigation, and D, treated her with disrespect and bullied her for a period of 3 years. A further complaint was submitted in December 2019, alleging that I'd acted with disrespect and attempted to intimidate her by holding up a copy of the Freeth report during the December 2019 council meeting. The then monitoring officer of the council decided that an independent investigation should be carried out into the allegations, and Wilkin Chapman LLP, a firm of solicitors based in Grimsby, were appointed. Their report was submitted to the council on the 7th of August 2020 and is also now in the public domain on the council's website. The conclusion of the independent investigator was that, and I quote, "There has not been a breach of the code of conduct of the authority by Councillor Butland," close quote. Madam Chairman, the allegations against me were, in my opinion, of such a serious nature that had there been a scintilla of truth in any of them, I would have been compelled to resign as a member of this authority. There should be no room on this council, or indeed any council, for bullies or intimidators. I'm naturally delighted with the outcome, not just for myself, but more importantly, because I believe that it can enable the strained relationship between the administration and the main opposition group to start to be repaired. The outcome of this investigation removes a major obstacle to that process. It is also helped by the fact that a member of the main opposition group is, as I understand it, no longer an administrator of a Facebook page, which has on occasions...
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Which has on occasions been particularly abusive.
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Of all sides of this
Thank you,
chamber.
Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott has forwarded a point of order. Councillor Abbott, do you want to say what it is?
Yeah, as raised previously with the monitoring officer and other officers, my intention, and that's my group, was to just listen to this statement on the basis that it was about the subject as stated in the agenda. Clearly, Councillor Butland, in my view, is now straying away from that and conflating issues as he did in October, and I don't think that's justified. These complaints relate almost exclusively to a period before the member was a member of the G&I group and has nothing to do with any Facebook postings. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Butland?
Madam Chairman, if I can finish my statement, I think yes. Councillor Abbott might have a different view.
Go on.
If I can just finish my statement. So, I also know that the Leader of the Opposition shares my views about the name calling that has gone on recently, both in this chamber and on social media. When the country was put back into lockdown at the beginning of last month, I extended an invitation to the Leader of the Opposition to rejoin the regular briefing meetings for group leaders. As I said, I think that the outcome of the two independent reports now offer the opportunity to make significant steps to return to what until recently has been very harmonious relationships between all groups on this council. To that end, I will invite the Leader of the Opposition to rejoin other group leaders at the table for cabinet meetings and to return and to resume his membership of a developing democracy group.
Point of order, Madam Chairman. This is, again, this has got nothing to do with the subject title. These are matters which are subject to a separate complaint, which I presume Councillor Butland is aware of. And I would ask the monitoring officer, please, as I requested, to now intervene and point out that whilst all these other issues are very interesting, and I do want to discuss them with Councillor Butland, they are not relevant to the subject on the title of the agenda.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Wait a minute, please.
No, that's fine, Madam Chairman, if I may. In terms of the content of Councillor Butland's statement, I am content that it is in relation to the statement. The offer of the re-invitement to the additional meetings is part of the conclusion of the investigations that have been concluded. The point of order in terms of this matter needs to be restricted to very limited matters in terms of the fact that the statement made is not in relation to the powers or duties of the council, and I'm content that the statement made falls within that remit.
So then, can I ask first of all, Councillor Butland, you still have more to say because
No, I
Councillor
have one
Abbott
more
is going to come after.
I have one more sentence, Madam
Fine,
Chairman.
you do that.
So I hope that that's Councillor Abbott, will feel able to accept both invitations so that Braintree District Council can once again demonstrate to other authorities that it is possible to be inclusive of all whilst having genuine political and policy differences. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Right, now thank you very much for that. Now, Councillor Abbott, you do have a chance now to make your statement.
Yes, thank you, and I will stick to the title of my subject. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have represented Rivenhall and Silverend for over 21 years, and Bradwell Village for a period, and more recently Cressing, together with Councillor Bob Wright and former District Councillor Phil Hughes. The last few years have brought unprecedented development pressure on the ward, and I fully appreciate several other wards have been similarly affected. It's not just this ward. We were told by the BDC administration that more development, particularly housing, was needed, but that it would be sustainable. It would not be in the villages at large scale, and it would come with infrastructure and services. On all counts, the administration of this council has failed to meet those criteria due to its flawed handling of the local plan, but also changes that their political colleagues have made at a national level. Not many years ago, the three parishes of Silverend, Cressing and Rivenhall were expected to accommodate several hundred new houses, and with a good use of brownfield sites. Yet now that total amount of housing could be in excess of 2,000 houses, and almost all of it on unallocated greenfield sites, whilst the largest brownfield site in Silverend lies derelict, somewhere we did have high hopes of seeing a good local development. Parish councils and residents were originally consulted on a local plan, which has now been completely overtaken by large-scale bolt-on housing estates to the villages. For these sites, not one of them offers a new GP surgery or a school or a shop or even a community centre. Even requests for zebra crossings have been refused on the busy B1018 at Cressing and on Rickstones Road in Rivenhall. Section 106 monies have been allocated, but the only GP surgery in the ward at Silverend has not been extended as a result. In terms of our local environment, the weight of so many large housing developments has caused significant damage, and I've referred to that in many previous council meetings. Long stretches of native mature hedgerows have been destroyed, trees lost, there's been a big increase in lorries on local roads, we now have flooding where it never used to occur, and we now have harm to what is supposedly one of the most protected lanes in the district, Rectory Lane in Rivenhall, which is a protected lane, a quiet lane, and part of the John Ray Walk. Residents are being increasingly disturbed by noise, light pollution, and increased traffic and danger on local roads. And this includes breaches of weight restrictions, which are now rarely enforced. So to those of you who said the district has to take much more housing, you're getting it without any doubt at all. But when you told us, the administration, that it would be sustainable and the villages would be protected, you have failed completely. I accept the need for more housing and more jobs, but that needs to be planned properly and done sustainably. These three villages of Rivenhall, Silverend and Cressing now face about the same level of housing development over the next decade as the town of Witham. Yet Witham has obviously much more services and infrastructure to support such growth. Finally, Madam Chairman, the final point I wanted to make is on the issue of affordability, because this is another key issue we were told about in the debate on housing and planning policy. Yes, a proportion of the housing on these sites is classified as affordable for those who would qualify to live in them. But what about the market housing that local families might wish to purchase? Let's have a look at three examples. Red Rose Silverend. The website this evening says current availability starts at £485,000. Bellway Rivenhall, a bit more affordable, but you're going to need £373,000 for a 3-bedroom house. Bellway Cressing, not far short of £500,000 on current availability. And if you want to buy a Churchill 4-bed detached house, you're going to need £635,000. So another false claim that was made that higher levels of development would reduce prices. In my view, Madam Chairman, and that of many residents and my fellow councillor Bob Wright, the administration should apologise for its failings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for that statement. And I understand that Councillor Mrs Spray, who is the relevant Cabinet member, would like to respond to Councillor Abbott. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you to Councillor Abbott, I recognise, of course I do, that all planning applications, especially the large ones, are not welcome. And as he acknowledged, it's not only his ward that is affected. My own ward in the Cones has been similarly affected by applications which not all residents, the parish council or I have supported. But of course, this authority cannot control where the applications come from and which sites are targeted. Section 2 of the local plan will give protection against unwanted applications, and we fully expect Section 2 to come forward early in 2021 for examination and hopefully adoption. In the meantime, we refuse and defend refusal of applications where we have planning grounds to do so, as Councillor Abbott knows. In fact, it was only last week that we had an appeal heard. I logged on for part of it. This was an application for housing in his ward at Cressing, which we had refused. The applicant has appealed. I think we put up a very good argument against it last week. We are awaiting the inspector's decision. With regards to infrastructure, we obtain through Section 106 agreements the best possible outcomes that we can. But we as a local authority, unfortunately, have no influence over highways or the NHS and where they dictate infrastructure should go and how much money they're prepared to put in for it. We are actually as disappointed as Councillor Abbott is that the brownfield site that he mentioned has not come forward, and officers are continuing to try and work a way through that. We will continue to scrutinise applications carefully and to refuse them where we've got planning grounds to do so. As far as affordability is concerned and affordable housing, yes, I accept the point, but we always try through every single application that comes forward to obtain affordable housing, and actually we do succeed. I know he's mentioned some examples there which are clearly not affordable, but on many of the sites where we do give permission, we do obtain affordable housing, either for rent or through joint ownership. So I don't accept that argument. And just to go back to Section 1 of the local plan, as he knows, we are waiting for the inspector's final verdict on that. If the garden communities had gone ahead, and I make no apology, I never have, and I won't, for supporting them, it would have come with the housing that we need and the infrastructure. In the meantime, we continue to defend applications where we think they are not on suitable sites, and we will always do so. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs Spray. Now, Councillor Spray's response to Councillor Abbott's statement concludes this item, but before I proceed to item 7, which is motioned by Councillor Miss Weeks, the monitoring officers would like to check Councillor Bore's connection, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bore, could we just test your connection, please? Councillor Bore?
Yes, sorry. Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
I apologise for late joining of the meeting, but I did have a problem with my connection.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're carrying on. Right. So now we are going to go to item 7 on the agenda, which is a motion by Councillor Miss Michelle Weeks, the RSPCA, and I'm sure everybody knows what that is, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, National Campaign on Fireworks. Members, this item is set out on page 6 of your agenda. And we have a supplemental report for this item, which was circulated to all members this afternoon, and I gather that you all do have it. Before I invite Councillor Miss Weeks to introduce and formally state this motion, I can confirm that one amendment has been submitted, which has been accepted by Miss Weeks and Councillor Abbott, both councillors, as the proposer and seconder of the original motion. So the amended motion is set out now in the supplemental report circulated to members and is the motion before members this evening. So Councillor Miss Weeks, please set out your motion as amended, which is set out on the supplemental report circulated this afternoon. Councillor Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Council notes the RSPCA National Campaign of Fireworks in which it is encouraging local authorities to support a range of measures designed to reduce the impact of fireworks on people and animals. Council further notes that the RSPCA believes the law is failing as it does not prevent or sufficiently reduce the risk of fireworks causing distress, injury or anxiety to people, as well as death, injury or distress to animals. Whilst the regulatory role of district councils with respect to fireworks is somewhat limited, this council nevertheless agrees that new measures are needed and therefore resolved to, number one, actively promote a public awareness campaign each year in the autumn about the impact of fireworks on animal welfare and vulnerable people, including the precautions that can be taken to mitigate risks. And number two, write to the UK government urging them to ensure enforcement of the existing legislation that limits the time fireworks can be set off, the periods they are available for sale, and the age at which they can be purchased in conjunction with the existing firework categorisations. And the reason I've brought this motion forward is that I have received several complaints from residents regarding loud fireworks being set off at all times of the night for several nights prior to and after bonfire night. The residents included concerned pet owners, the elderly and carers of people with dementia who have become very distressed by the fireworks. As an animal lover, this subject is very close to my heart, and I thank you for allowing me to bring this motion forward and look forward to your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miss Weeks. Upon submission, this motion was seconded by Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott, can you confirm that you second this motion, please?
I do.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
I do.
Thank you. So we're now going to open up the debate on this motion. Can I remind members that they may only speak once on the motion, and speeches should be confined to the matter of the motion and shouldn't last any longer than 5 minutes, and I'll love you if you, as you know, if you can make it less. But I will exercise my discretion to allow longer ones if the point is particularly complex or detailed. So now, do any members wish to speak on the motion? If so, please indicate by the chat function, and I'll take people as they appear in turn. Where am I seeing? I'm seeing Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to firstly thank Councillor Weeks and Councillor Abbott for accepting the amendment that was proposed. I think it makes the motion more supportable from all sides of the chamber, I hope, when we go to vote. Personally, I had the view that enforcement of existing law is better than more law in certain respects, and so changing point number 2 was certainly the way I felt we ought to go. And just to remind people that the law that exists means that fireworks are categorised into 4 portions. Category 4 can only be set off by professionals. 2 and 3 are for public use and purchased by adults. Fireworks can only be allowed at certain times of the year, really around fireworks night and the New Year and other more cultural festivals like Chinese New Year. And obviously their time of setting off is limited to outside of 11 PM to 7 AM unless for special occasions like New Year. There are quite significant penalties already in place. On the spot fines of £90, they can be increased to fines of up to 5,000 or even imprisonment for up to 6 months for serious offences. So there's quite an arsenal of enforcement available, and it's really just ensuring that that arsenal is used appropriately. As I'm aware, as Councillor Weeks outlined, that there are significant distress and issues caused by unlawful setting off of these devices, both to animals and humans. So I'm grateful for this motion and grateful for the acceptance of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Unsworth is next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to add my support to this, and as Councillor Weeks has had, I have also received numerous complaints from within Coggeshall, where fireworks have been going off all sorts of unsavoury times, and not necessarily on the prescribed times. I think we live in a different world where we are closer with pets. Pets are more important to us, and this has been emphasised much more of late, and I would really like to see us taking some action on this. I'd just like to point out one of the things the RSPCA talks about, and that's the noise levels. I realise that the council powers are limited on this, but 90 decibels is what they're suggesting, and for many of us this will be a familiar equivalence of a train passing a station very fast, an express train, where they're currently set at 120 decibels. 120 decibels is 30 times louder than that train passing the station. It is very unlikely that most people on this council have actually experienced it, and it would be akin to a very, very large clap of thunder that makes you jump. So I guess not many people have actually experienced that sort of thing. I would like to see the council openly support the RSPCA more openly and more fully. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor McArdle next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd very much like to support this motion from Councillor Weeks. I organised for a survey on a Facebook page in the Fairview estate, which is part of my ward. 95% in favour of more restrictions. About 60 people replied. Some of the comments were limit the time they're available for sale to a few days before and raise the age to 21. Please campaign for silent fireworks. There's a growing majority in Braintree who feel this way. I love fireworks, however, I felt for a long time that they should be sold to adults who have applied for a licence. As a family, we love them, but I think they should be allowed to limit shock and distress to people and animals. Displays only. No selling to the public. 100% displays. There's a real strength of feeling. People find that they're becoming a nuisance. It's not a problem exclusive to the UK, with other countries having much stricter rules. And I believe the RSPCA are right in campaigning on this issue. There is a problem with enforcing the current rules because it poses a problem for the police and environmental health officers to locate the exact source of fireworks being let off. Existing regulations do not prevent or reduce the risk of fireworks causing distress. But certainly I would support the motion in recognition of the distress caused to both humans and animals, especially the unpredictability and loudness of fireworks, which are becoming more of an increasing nuisance. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wendy Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was very happy to support the original motion. Most of the problem is regarding the noise. And so I'm sorry to see this amendment has taken out what to me was the most important part. Environmental services already have powers which they can use and do use. We had a case a few years ago of an events place in the district that has weddings, parties, all sorts of things, and they invariably had firework displays. In the winter it wasn't so bad, but in the summer suddenly they'd be having the displays at midnight, which of course was illegal, and residents had got bedroom windows open and were disturbed. Now that was easy to deal with because we knew where the event was taking place. It was dealt with and they no longer do it after 11 o'clock at night. It says about enforcing the existing legislation. Well, how can you do that? These fireworks are random as some of us know, Councillor Mrs. Walters was listening to them at 8 o'clock last Thursday evening. Who knows whether it's a certain decibel or not as a member of the public? You don't. There's no way our enforcement officers can go out and deal with these random fireworks episodes. And that's why, I mean, there has been many petitions to government about fireworks. I signed them all because I think they're out of order now. Those of us who are older will know that fireworks never used to be this loud. You've got the pretty lights, which everybody can enjoy, but there were never these appalling loud ones that you have nowadays. And so to see that taken out really concerns me. As I said, it is really very difficult to enforce the law as it is because of the randomness of the acts. However, had it been stayed in about the number of decibels, then people would not be able to manufacture above a certain level or sell them. So therefore, though fireworks will still go on at different times, the noise will not be there. I'm now very torn. I agree with item 1. Item 2 is iffy, but to me, the most important thing has been taken out of this motion, and I'm really very sorry for that. It is the noise that disturbs people. Councillor McArdle has read from residents within our ward. That is what the complaints are about, is the loudness, and that has now gone from the motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Schmidt. I have Councillor Hensman next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I too am happy to support this. The RSPCA goes without saying, campaigns for the animals, which don't otherwise have a voice. But I'm also pleased to see that there are the people element as well. So there's the hidden disabilities, whether it's anxiety, PTSD, tinnitus, autism, dementia, among others, that definitely need to be acknowledged in this context. But I think also it's the size of the fireworks, where they're smaller, they don't go quite so high in the sky, so they give the perception of a louder bang. Now, irrespective of the noise, it's the suddenness, it's the spontaneous, forget that word. It's you just don't know when it's going to happen, and the times that they're doing it are broader than just the celebration. The gone is the, I mean, I love a fireworks display, don't get me wrong, but when it's organised and it's done properly, you know what's coming, you know what to expect, you see them going off. And the other thing for me is the littering, because fireworks make far more mess than just the average cigarette butt. But it's unenforceable, because how do you prove where it's come from? And even some houses where these fireworks land on the roof, I've seen houses go up because they've been they've caught light. So I totally support the motion, and the key thing here is it's a campaign for better awareness. And even although the noise has been diluted, I think we could still do something around the awareness, and therefore the points that we all want to make could be included in that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dervish, I have.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to come back on the comments made by Councillor Pritchard, if I may. It was just to say that I do support the motion, and I also support the comments and the amendments that Councillor Pritchard has made. I think it is important, as Councillor Pritchard mentioned, to be sympathetic to a number of cultures, like Chinese, but there's also Diwali as well, which is one of the huge cultures that use fireworks in their celebrations. So I think it's very important that we are mindful that people do use these as an act of their celebration. However, in my personal opinion, if I had my way, I'd ban them all together, but I'd be very unfavoured. But yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, I do think we need to be mindful of those cultures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I broadly support this motion, but like my colleagues, I'm rather sad that item 2, the reference to noise, has been omitted. It's rather unfortunate. Unfortunately, fireworks now go off or are let off on various occasions, not just Guy Fawkes Night, it's birthdays, special occasions and what have you. But I would like to see legislation brought in to limit the noise, less noise of the decibels of the device. I mean, there are several pieces of legislation around. Things like exhaust noise has legislation on decibel noise. Machinery that runs at night, pumps, generators, are all subject to decibel noise. And I think that Ms. Weeks probably could have left that in if we're going to pass a motion to write to government that this noise should be considered, or the level of noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Now, Councillor Abbott, I have nothing from any of the other members, but I do know that Councillor Abbott hasn't spoken yet in this debate. So, Councillor Abbott, as you seconded this motion and reserved your right to speak and haven't yet spoken, would you like to speak now, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's good to see the level of support for the motion, and I hope members will vote for it as amended. This is a serious issue for many residents at this time of year, which is why we proposed the specific point 1 about a campaign each autumn to provide information and guidance. It's also an issue, as Councillor Weeks says, for people who own pets, which can be terrified by fireworks. And it's also an issue, and I know this all too well, about the impact on wild animals. Birds in particular, which can be roosting in trees and hedges, where people let off fireworks in rural areas, can actually cause them to leave an area. There's scientific evidence to show that. And it's unacceptable because obviously we have laws to protect wild animals from these otherwise very sudden, loud, explosive noises. As other members have said, fireworks can be enjoyable for many people, but outside of planned events, each year we seem to be getting more and more unwanted impacts from the ad hoc use of fireworks. I have myself seen at close hand what the indiscriminate and thoughtless use of fireworks can do, including the death of animals, which is very distressing. So, whilst accepting the amendment, and referring to what Councillor Rose just said, I mean, the reason we accepted it, Councillor Rose, because we thought if it didn't, the motion might get voted down. That's what's happened previously. So that's why we accepted it. But whilst accepting the moment, it is a pity that the RSP request for the decibel limit of 90 decibels isn't still in the motion. I mean, it's very interesting. A number of members, including the Cabinet member, Mrs. Schmidt, has said she would have liked to have seen it kept in, and we certainly would have liked to have seen it kept in. Just finally, Madam Chairman, as to make a comparison as to how loud 90 decibels is, and that would be a new upper limit compared to the current fireworks, which are a lot louder. It's easily loud enough to frighten pets and to cause impacts on human hearing. I was doing a bit of research about this afternoon. Impact on human hearing from repeated noises starts at about 85 decibels. So 90 decibels would still be above that. At 91 decibels, it's advised that workers should wear ear protectors if they're exposed to it for more than 2 hours a day in their place of work. So we're talking about thresholds which are already recognised as having negative impacts. And my very final point was about the point very well made by Councillor McArdle about enforcement. It's very difficult to enforce the existing regulations across a whole range of issues. And that's precisely why the RSPCA is saying there needs to be a new blanket limit on the loudness of fireworks, because once that happens, they simply can't be manufactured to be louder than that. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Councillor Miss Weeks as the proposer of the motion to close our debate. Can I remind you that you should confine your reply to previous speakers and you shouldn't introduce any new matters. So, Councillor Miss Weeks.
Hello. Yes, thanks very much, and I welcome all your comments. And I think, yes, like Councillor Abbott said, it would have been nice to have kept in the limit of 90 decibels, but we weren't sure that the motion would go ahead otherwise. So that's why we did agree to the amendment. But I think we can go forward on this, maybe in future. But for the time being, this would be lovely if this could go through. And yeah, we'll carry on with the good work. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weeks. So I'm going to put this motion, as set out on the supplemental report, to a vote. We'll be conducting the votes by way of a roll call. And I'll now hand over to the Chief Executive, Andy Wright.
Good evening, members. I'd like to welcome Councillor Hicks and Councillor Wallace to the meeting. Just to inform Councillor Hicks and Councillor Wallace, unfortunately you joined too late to be included in this vote, but obviously you'll be able to actively engage with the rest of the meeting. So as usual, I will call out each member's name and ask for your vote. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Ball?
For.
Councillor Bebb?
For.
Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Butland?
For.
Councillor Coleridge?
Abstain.
Was that for Councillor Coleridge, sorry?
Sorry, I was abstaining.
Abstain, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Courtauld?
Against.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
Abstain.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Mrs Dervish?
For.
Councillor Everard?
For.
Councillor Mrs Garrod?
For.
Councillor Hensman?
For.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Hume?
For.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mrs Kilmartin?
For.
Councillor Mann?
For.
Councillor McArdle?
For.
Councillor McKee?
For.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Mrs Parker?
For.
Councillor Mrs Pell?
For.
Councillor Pritchard?
For.
Councillor Radley?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
Abstain.
Councillor Rose?
For.
Councillor Mrs Sandham?
For.
Councillor Miss Santamoro?
For.
Councillor Mrs Scattergood?
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Smith?
Abstain.
Councillor Swear?
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Spray?
For.
Councillor Tattersley?
Abstain.
Councillor Thorogood?
For.
Councillor Unsworth?
For.
Councillor Van Dolken?
For.
Councillor Mrs Walters?
Abstain.
Councillor Miss Weeks?
For.
Councillor Mrs Wilson? Councillor Mrs Wilson?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to unmute. Abstain.
Sorry,
Abstain.
abstain, sorry. Councillor Wrench?
For.
Councillor Wright?
For.
Thank you, members. We will just take a couple of seconds to add that up.
So there are 32 for, and I then find that the vote is in favour of the motion. Thank you very much, members. The motion is approved. So now I'm going to proceed to item 8, which is a review of the scheme of delegation for planning.
Apologies, Chairman. I'm ever so sorry to interrupt, but I do need to test a connection for Councillor Hicks and for
Oh, yes.
Councillor Wallace. So if I may do that on your behalf. So
You may. So we're now going to check the connections to Councillor Wallace and Councillor Hicks, and also to make their declaration of interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks, can we test your connection to this meeting, please?
Good evening. Yes, hello everybody. Loud and clear.
Thank
Visually.
you. Councillor Hicks, on behalf of the chairman, do you have any declarations of interest you need to make in tonight's agenda?
Non-pecuniary interest in item 8. I have actually made a comment in writing to this review of the delegation of planning, and I'm also a member of Whitsun Town Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Wallace, can we test your connection, please? Councillor Wallace.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Right.
Good connection.
Apologies for arriving late, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So we've had the declarations from our two members. Thank you. I hand back the meeting to you. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Now we're all together, and I'm going to say that we are going on to item 8, which is the review of the scheme of delegation for planning. Now, you have this item set out on pages 70 to 74 of the agenda. Sorry, 7 to 74. Is that right? Or is that 70 to 74? So while that's being decided, I'd like to invite Councillor Mrs. Gabrielle Spray, who's the Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations set out on page 9 of the agenda, including her amendments set out in the supplemental report. So Councillor Spray, can you present this report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm pleased to present this report on the proposed revised scheme of delegation for planning. The proposed changes were presented to the Planning Committee on the 13th of October and to the Developing Democracy Group on the 20th of October. They were then discussed at a supporting community virtual meeting held with parish clerks on the 2nd of November and then considered by the Corporate Governance Group on the 12th of November. The public consultation took place from the 26th of October for 3 weeks. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who took the time to submit a response. As members will have seen from the agenda report, a total of 46 responses were received, 21 of those from parish and town councils, the remainder from agents, members of the public, and some focus groups. And although some of the consultees expressed reservations about certain aspects of the scheme, many nevertheless made comments and suggestions which were constructive and helpful. As a result of the feedback received, several positive changes have been made to the final version of this proposal, and I will come on to those in a moment. Members, the paper is very detailed, and thanks go to our Planning Development Manager, Chris Padgey, and his team, who've worked very hard to produce a revised scheme, which they and I believe results in a good balance between providing a more efficient planning service and still maintaining a democratic process. There is also an opportunity to improve communication with members of the Planning Committee when considering larger developments at an early pre-application stage. I just want to address a couple of the key points about this revised scheme and some of the main concerns raised by those who responded to the consultation. First, and I think top of the list to say, is that the opportunity to comment on any application, whether or not that is in favour or an objection, is not being lost, not at all. The consultation process for planning applications remains unchanged, whether that is for one house or 100. One of the proposed changes to the scheme of delegation is that committee agendas will no longer be split into Part A and Part B applications. Now, currently, Part B applications are often on the agenda because a town or parish council has put forward an opinion that is contrary to the officer's recommendation. To give an example, an officer may have recommended approval because an application meets with all planning policies and there are no objections from consultees, such as highways, for example. Just the town council or parish council view, which is contrary. Now, under the current regulations, that means this has to come to committee. The officer has to write up the report. It needs to be checked over by the planning development manager, and a presentation of slides has to be prepared with maps, drawings, and photographs, etc. Then on the evening of the committee, if no one from that town council or parish council has registered to speak, the chair asks the planning committee if they agree to move the application because there are no planning reasons to refuse it. Another member of the committee will move approval, someone else seconds it, and that's it. If there's more than one application of this type in Part B, then they all get moved en bloc. So the item is there on the agenda, and then it's waved through with no debate. There is an estimated cost of around £1,500. This figure comes from the Planning Advisory Service, by the way, to get to this stage. Now, that does include the admin, sending out notification letters early on and so on, but nevertheless, there are costs for an application to come to committee. And of course, there is the officer time and resources needed. It really isn't the most efficient use of everyone's time, and I'm sure it doesn't make a great deal of sense to many people watching. I do recognise that there are many parish councils who do appear regularly to speak once they've put in their objection, and that is always very much appreciated, but not all do. Several comments have been made that town and parish councils might appear at committees more often if they had more notice of applications and increased time to submit comments. Now, the difficulty with that is that the timescales which officers have to work to for decision making, if the deadlines for determination are not met, there is a risk that an applicant will go to appeal on the grounds of non-determination. That does happen, and then it's in the hands of an inspector and it isn't a local decision at all. Now, I would say at this point that officers are very committed to working more closely with parish councils going forward, and they will review how they currently work with parish councils and town councils and how that could be improved. So if this revised scheme is approved tonight, members, any minor applications for residential developments for 3 to 9 dwellings will be decided by officers under delegated authority, unless, and there are 3 triggers here, unless the town or parish council view is contrary to the officer recommendation, or the application has been called in by a BDC member with suitable planning reasons, or 6 or more representations from separate households have been received. And that 3rd reason has been added following the recent consultation. Now, in these circumstances, the application will be referred to chair's briefing for a decision as to whether it should be decided by officers under delegated authority or come to the committee for a decision. Concerns have certainly been expressed about why the chair and vice chair of the planning committee should have responsibility for referrals to committee. And I just want to point out that councillors are appointed to those positions because they have considerable experience of the planning process and an in-depth knowledge of the district, both rural and urban. And any planning committee chairman, and I'm not just talking about those councillors currently in post, but they will recognise what is important in terms of development to the communities in the district, and they have the ability to send that application to committee for determination. Under Part A of the revised scheme, any applications for 10 or more homes will come to committee. In addition, the revised scheme of delegation paper stated that any commercial development comprising a floor space of 1,000 square metres would be referred to committee. Now, during the consultation, a point was made that any application for 1,000 square metres of floor space is potentially significant and should be automatically considered by the planning committee. That's a point well made, and accordingly, we've amended Part A to ensure that is incorporated. I think actually that was a point made by Wethersfield Parish Council, so we have listened and taken that on board. I just want to turn to the members' forum, and I want to dispel some misconceptions about this proposal straight away. This is not going to replace the planning committee, neither is it an addition to the planning committee. The forum will be an opportunity at an early stage, so that's pre-application, before a scheme is formally submitted, for a developer to present their ideas to members of the planning committee. The intention is to invite also relevant ward councillors, so that might also include councillors for a neighbouring ward, if we're talking about a very big housing development that might impact on a wider area. Representatives from the town or parish council would also be invited to attend, and these meetings will have governance arrangements in place and will be minuted. Following the consultation and comments from a number of consultees, I'm pleased to confirm that the forum meetings are also able to be webcast and recorded so that public can view the proceedings. And I can assure members and any interested parties watching tonight that there is no behind closed doors aspect to this. The members' forum will not be a decision-making process. As many of you will be aware, it's very important that members of the Planning Committee approach decision-making at committee stage with an open mind and no predetermination, and this will remain the case. There are some increasingly complex applications coming forward, and this is an opportunity for officers and committee members to identify significant principal concerns and issues, which the applicant can then take away and either address those concerns or make a decision as to whether or not to proceed with their scheme. Neither, by the way, is the Members' Forum intended to replace a developer's consultation with the town or parish council or the local community at an early stage. In fact, it remains very important that they do engage, and we all know that some developers are better than others at this. So as far as the precise details of frequency, length of forum meetings is concerned and how many presentations are given at each meeting, these details are to be decided. I think I can say with some certainty that they will be held in the evenings to allow for those who have other daytime commitments to be able to attend. Now, I realise that this forum appears to be a bit revolutionary for this authority. It's not something we've ever contemplated before, but I can say that this type of early pre-application engagement is in operation elsewhere. Some members of the development management team, including the manager, Chris Padgey, have come to BDC from other planning authorities outside of Essex and have direct experience of this system working well. And I hope this allays some of the concerns that have been expressed by consultees. I just will draw members' attention to one change in the report. It came to officer's attention that all permission in principle applications, PIP as I will call them, at the moment appear in Part C, so they can all be delegated with under-delegated powers, but this route should really not be used for more than 2 homes. It was a fair point that was made, and consequently it's been corrected within Appendix 1, Part B, to say that PIP applications for 3 to 9 dwellings should be referred to the Chair's briefing if they meet the 3 previously mentioned triggers. I have to say, actually, permission in principle applications aren't used very often. I think we've had 3 in the last year, maybe, but it's nevertheless an important point, and we've made that change. Finally, members, as far as a transition period is concerned, if this scheme is adopted, it is intended to start from the 1st of January. Any planning applications already in the pipeline, in other words, any received on or prior to the 31st of December that would usually come to Planning Committee, will still do so. Members, the recommendations are on page 9 of the agenda. I'm just going to read through them quickly. That full council, 1, approves the proposed revised scheme of delegation as set out within Appendix 1, which will come into force on the 1st of January 2021, and that's with the additional change to the permission in principle applications as I have just described. 2, if the proposed revised scheme of delegation is approved in accordance with recommendation 1 above, the monitoring officer is authorised to make the necessary changes to the council's constitution so as to enable the scheme of delegation to be incorporated. 3, agrees to delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Planning to approve the protocols for determining the significant test within Part A, Chair's briefing and the member call-in process. And 4, agrees the principle of a members' forum to enable engagement with members of the Council's Planning Committee. The terms of reference, governance arrangements, frequency of meetings will be subject to further consultation with the monitoring officer, the Planning Committee, the Developing Democracy Group and the Corporate Governance Group prior to a further report being referred to full council for approval. I so move. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Spray. So members, Councillor Mrs. Spray has moved the recommendations set out on page 9 of your agenda. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes.
Councillor Scattergood, thank you very much. Do you reserve your right to speak?
No, Madam Chairman, I'd like to speak now, if I may, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wish to second the recommendation. Having read all the responses to the consultation, I wish to respond to some of the misconceptions raised by several of the consultees. 1. The chairman and the vice chairman of the planning committee do not have any powers to approve or refuse an application. The only way an application can be approved or refused is by planning officers or members of the planning committee. 2. Read the chair's briefing. I have conducted these meetings since 2015. I have over 20 years planning experience, and I have probably attended more planning training sessions than many other councillors on this council. I'm not referring to just the 2 to 3 hour sessions arranged by officers, but I have attended residential training sessions that take place over several days, arranged by well-established training organisations, for example, PASS, which is the Planning Advisory Service. At the briefing, the Vice Chairman and I have all the applications before us. We have access to all plans, responses from statutory bodies, the applicant, the parish council, if it is the parished area, all correspondence from supporters or objectors. At no time do we know what the officer's decision will be. We have to have regard to the BDC planning policy and the MPPF. Our brief is to recognise whether or not the application would be significant. Significance is determined by size, scale, design, and environmental impact. 3. The planning committee is a quasi-judicial committee rooted in decades of case law, and it is non-political. It is mentioned in the responses to the consultation that at the chair's briefing, I could make a recommendation on political grounds. I can assure everyone that I have never made a political planning decision at either the chair's briefing or at a planning committee. It would be quite unlawful for me to do so. I'm not sure that members of the council who are not members of the planning committee fully understand the pressures that officers in the department are under. For example, deadlines to meet, preparation of reports, preparing for appeals, dealing with enforcement issue, preparing agendas for committee, signing off decisions, to name but a few. It is to reduce pressure on our officers, to enable them to work in a timely and an effective manner so that the council can meet the government and the BDC performance levels that this revised scheme of delegation is being requested. It is not the intention to ignore the public participation in the planning process, but to enhance it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Scattergood. Now, members, before I open this debate, we have to deal with an amendment to this motion. This amendment is confined to Appendix 1 of the report, which is referred to in Recommendation 1 of the decision on page 9 of the report. The amendment is set out in the amendments report in red text. Can I please invite now Councillor Nick Unsworth to set out the amendment? Councillor Unsworth?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In accordance with your initial request, I'll be as quick as possible. First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Spray and Councillor Scattergood for their outline and recognise their experience in planning matters. There are two simple amendments. The first, in Part A, covers the changes in the number of houses referred to committees. And whilst it remains the same at the level set for our towns, it is proposed that it reduces to 5 outside the planning boundaries and in rural or small communities, where the impact of 10 houses on small communities is much more significant. And this is the only amendment I'm proposing for Part A. The second change is for Part B and concerns our members' call-in, where it is expected that if a member calls in an application with the proper reasoning, it goes to committee and does not go through the chairman's gateway by default. Again, this is the only amendment to Part B, and I do not wish to change the original process and the chair's gateway. Simply add that a member's call-in goes to committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Now, does this proposed amendment find a seconder, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to second it.
Councillor
Thank you.
Thorogood, thank you very much. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes,
Speak now?
please. I wish to reserve my right to speak.
Oh, thank you. So now, do any members wish to speak on the amendment? The chat box has showed me a lot of people who wanted to speak, but they weren't putting that down for the amendment. So I'm only interested in people who want to speak on the amendment at this moment. If so, will you please indicate by the chat function on the amendment, and I'll take each member in turn. You may only speak once on the amendment, and speeches should be confined to the matter under discussion and should last no longer than 5 minutes, or less if you're looking to help me out. But I will exercise my discretion if I must allow a longer speech if the point's particularly complex or detailed. So now I'm looking at my chat, and I want just for the amendment, and it's probable. So now, Councillor Pritchard, is this on the amendment?
No, it was on the original item. Thank
Yes,
you.
I want amendments. So can I have?
Madam Chairman, if I may, we have Councillor Spray and Councillor Abbott indicating to speak on the amendment.
On the amendment. So I'll start with Councillor Spray then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Unsworth, for your amendment. I can't agree to this, I'm afraid, to the proposed amendments. The inclusion of the words within the development boundaries of Braintree, Witham and Halstead, this is the amendment to part 1. Well, this aspect of the amendment would not work as far as I can see, because what happens with major planning applications in all the rural and village areas outside the 3 town boundaries? I think they might feel a bit sore about that if we adopted this. And the inclusion of the words minor planning applications comprising 5 to 9 proposed houses in all rural and village areas outside of the 3 town boundaries. Well, it just adds for me an additional layer of complexity to the scheme of delegation, because you're splitting up rural and urban areas. So it's unnecessarily complicating it. And it is actually anticipated, and it does say this in the report, that the majority of applications within Part B, which are referred to the Chair's briefing, will actually come to the Planning Committee. You know, we acknowledge that. So I think that, you know, if you were going to include in your amendment all of those for automatic referring to planning committees you've proposed, you remove the ability to scrutinise the responses received and consider whether these should be referred to planning committee for determination or not. Your amendments to Part B, again, your wording within the development boundaries of Braintree, Witham and Halstead, or 3 to 4 proposed houses in all rural and village areas outside of the 3 town boundaries. Again, I repeat really what I've just said, which is you're splitting rural and village areas. So if those amendments in Part A are not supported, then there's no need to amend Part B. And also, just finally, I think you did have an amendment, inclusion of footnote to Part B, which we don't consider to be necessary. You're saying that the normal expectation should be that if clear and valid planning reasons have been given by a town or parish council or a BDC councillor who's called in an application, then it should be determined by the planning committee. Well, if the 3 triggers, because there's an additional one, 6 representations by residents rather, from 6 different addresses, if that triggers an application to come to the Chair's briefing, then it will be for Chair's briefing to decide whether or not it comes to committee. And as I have already said, we anticipate that the majority of them will. So I don't support the amendments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And I have Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd invite Councillor Spray to actually read the amendment, because I think she's actually introducing matters which aren't in there. The amendment doesn't attempt to split rural and villages areas up. It puts them together and says that they should be treated as a particular case, as opposed to the 3 main towns. Now, I would assume that the administration have read the parish council responses, because a common theme throughout the parish council responses was their concern that the threshold of 10 was too high for many rural and village areas. So we as the main opposition group are responding to that concern by parish councils. That's the purpose of that amendment. It's very simple. With regards to the footnote, it's not superfluous, it's needed, because a clear point which has been raised time and time again by the chairman of planning committee, other senior members and officers, is that parish councils sometimes put in representations which don't have clear enough or valid enough planning reasons. So what we're saying is that if they do, or if a member does, is a call-in, then the normal expectation would be that should go to planning committee. Currently, there's no guarantee at all that that will happen. So we're not actually undermining in any way the changes, radical as they are. We're suggesting two things which would give more assurance to members and parish councils. And I've said it many, many times before, and I'll say it again. One of the worst things about consultations is consult and ignore. If you consult people about something, you should try as much as possible to take on board their views. Having been through all the parish council's concerns, one of the most significant was about the issue of the relative nature of the size of developments, town and village. Halstead and even Witham Town Council also made comments, although they weren't necessarily with respect to that, they were very strong concerns about the thrust of where this was going. So all we're really saying is, please just take note of what the parish councils have said in the consultation and act accordingly. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't have anybody else who wants to speak on this, but Councillor Thorogood hasn't yet spoken in the debate, and you seconded this motion, this amendment, Councillor Thorogood. So would you now like to say something on it? Can I invite you to speak now?
Yeah, I just want to be brief. I just want to say that even small applications of just under 9 or up to 9 dwellings can have a massive impact on a rural setting. For instance, 10 houses or 9 houses in Fearing is 1% of the houses total. So that's why we're sort of saying that the bar needs to be lower for the villages outside of the 3 main towns. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So as the proposer of the amendment, Councillor Unsworth, you can reply to the speeches. Can I remind you that you should confine your reply to previous speakers and you should not introduce any new matters. Councillor Unsworth?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, just to reiterate that the first amendment is to protect the smaller communities and to ensure that, as Councillor Thorogood has said, 10 houses is quite a big impact on places like Kelvedon, Fearing, Coggeshall, etc. And as such, that's where the level should be set. In terms of the amendment I've made to Part B, that is to ensure that the members' call-in goes to committee irrespective, and that is the expectation that it goes to committee, so it's not removed and it does not go through the gateway. I'm quite happy with the other gateways that are in place, but once a member makes a call-in, I believe, with the appropriate information, that should go to committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, members, the amendment has been moved and seconded, and I'm going to put this amendment to the vote. We will be conducting the votes by way of the roll call again, and I will now hand over to the Chief Executive, Andy Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll now take the vote on the scheme of delegation for planning the amendment. I shall read each member out individually. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Bore.
Against.
Councillor Bebb.
Against.
Councillor Bowers.
Against.
Councillor Butland.
Against.
Councillor Coleridge.
Against.
Councillor Courtauld.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham.
Against.
Councillor Cunningham.
Against.
Councillor Dervish.
Against.
Councillor Everard.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Garrod.
Go on, Joe.
Sorry, was that against, Councillor Garrod?
Against, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hensman.
Against.
Councillor Horner.
Against.
Councillor Hume.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Kilmartin.
Abstain.
Councillor Mann.
For.
Councillor McCardle.
Against.
Councillor McKee.
Against.
Councillor Monday.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Parker.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Pell.
Abstain.
Councillor Pritchard.
Against.
Councillor Radley.
Abstain.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Sandham.
For.
Councillor Miss Santamoro.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Scattergood.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Smith.
Against.
Councillor Swear.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Spray.
Against.
Councillor Tattersley.
Against.
Councillor Thorogood.
For.
Councillor Unsworth.
For.
Councillor Van Dulken.
Against.
Councillor Wallace.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Walters.
Against.
Councillor Miss Weeks.
For.
Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Wrench.
Against.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
Thank you, members.
Members, there are 32 against the amendment, so the amendment is lost. Thank you very much. Now we're going back to the as we have dealt with that amendment, we proceed now to deal with the substantive motion. And I go back to my list of people who wanted to speak. And the first person I had down to speak for the motion, Councillor Abbott, you begin, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And there's a comment on chat from Councillor Tattersley that there's an extraneous noise. Can members hear an extraneous noise on my feed?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, if I may,
Can someone say what it is?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, if I may just interrupt in that regard. Every so often there's a ping in terms of a notification that someone's receiving. I'm not sure whose machine or speaker that's coming from, but can I just remind members, if they have a alternative device or they have their sound turn up, couldn't they either turn their microphones off or just put that separate device on silent going forward? I'd be most grateful.
Oh, you're all busy checking everything then.
Well, I don't have anything, so I don't know what the noise is. Anyway.
Is it?
I will look at it after the meeting, but I don't have any other devices on, so I don't know, and I'm on headphones, so I don't know how any other sound could be being picked up.
Okay, well, we'll carry on and we'll see what happens.
All right.
So the first person I have is Councillor Abbott. So will you
Madam
start
Chairman.
out? This is on the substantive motion.
Indeed. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't accept that the current system is so badly flawed as claimed in the report. The failure over the local plan is a major factor in the pressure on the planning committee and officers, but the administration, as we saw in the earlier items, seems completely incapable of accepting that. Planning committee already gives very careful consideration to large development proposals. Parish council attendance at planning committee should not be used against them. The quality of their argument is mainly in their representation, and that's far more important. We don't criticise applicants or agents for not speaking at planning committee, nor is their lack of attendance at meetings, which I would imagine is the majority of applicants, a reason for this review. The delegation rate is not low. It is 92%, which means that only 88% of applications actually go to committee. The consultation is welcome, but the G&I group were not included in the discussion at Developing Democracy Group on the 20th of October. The parish council representations, as I made clear on the discussion on the amendment, are very clear, and the majority are concerned about a weakening of their involvement, and specifically many raised the issue of the thresholds of the number of houses in applications comparing urban with rural. So it's a shame that the amendments were not carried for that reason. Finally, Madam Chairman, whilst I can see some merit in the forum process, I'm not against it. I think it's going to be difficult to see how it can work effectively for members of the Planning Committee who obviously also have a ward member role, and also for those of us who are parish councillors, given the much tighter advice we were recently given about predetermination by the monitoring officer. I don't see at the moment how it would be possible for members to fully contribute to these forums without being accused of predetermination at a later date. Surely comments made by BDC Planning Committee members at those forums would need to be very much muted, otherwise they could be accused of predetermination. And on that point, on page 26, it says that there is a lack of any form of engagement with planning committee members at pre-application stage. I quote exactly. But we often actually get sent material by developers at that stage. So in conclusion, Madam Chairman, whilst it would be expected that the recommendations would be approved this evening, I think there is a very real danger, as I said previously on the discussion on the amendment, that we're missing the point of the consultation, which is that we should be listening particularly to the parish councils who've made very clear representations. And I feel by simply ignoring them, which is effectively what we're doing, the council's making a big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, I have next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you also for the detailed report that's accompanied the agenda. It's actually very interesting to read the comments of the planning officers and to see their perspective on how the service is running. And essentially, it is very important for the council to be running an effective and efficient planning service for all concerned. Obviously, there are statutory timescales that must be met, otherwise it appeals for non-determination. And it is also important that the officer staff is deployed effectively, and particularly that more experienced staff are free to work on the more complex applications and to work on the appeals. I think it's important to note that now there is increasing demand, as Councillor Scattergood mentioned, on the planning service, with increasing volume of applications and very complex appeals. So it is actually extremely important that we do try to make the service run as efficiently as possible. The scheme, I think, offers a very clear and simple system which everybody can understand. I think it will be helpful to both members of the public and also applicants to make it easier for them to work with. I have read all the comments from the parish councils and the comments that have been submitted by members of the public. I'm very grateful for those. I think one of the main concerns has been the fact that applications for 1 to 2 dwellings will no longer go to planning committee. However, in my experience, having been on the planning committee a number of years, it is very unusual for applications, or for small applications like that, for the planning committee to disagree with the officer's advice. And as Councillor Spray has already pointed out, we also have a number of applications which have to go into Part B and are determined en bloc, and it's really completely pointless to do that. I would say there are obviously still safeguards for those small applications. Obviously, parish councils remain a statutory statutory consultee, and their views will be taken into account. There is also the backstop, as I would call it, of any application the development manager considers significant. So that could possibly cover 1 or 2 dwellings if it was felt that it was a significant application. I'm pleased to see the members forum. I think that will be a positive development, and generally I would like to see a little more engagement with parish councils, particularly on smaller applications. And I note that in the report that the officers feel that that we will work to see how we can improve that dialogue with parish councils. The I'd like to make, obviously the wiper we may in the future imagine need
Councillor
to revisit
Parker,
this again.
apologies to interrupt you. You broke up in your last few words. Would you like to turn your camera off and repeat your last sentence so your colleagues can hear your contribution to the debate, please?
There we go. Try again. Yes, just I was just noting the planning white paper and possible need to revise, look at the delegation again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Hensman next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, this evening, I'd like to express my appreciation for the work of the portfolio holder for planning and the chairman of the planning committee, and commend the support they received from the planning department. In my opinion, they all have the unenviable task of interpreting planning law for the whole of the district, and we are fortunate to have such high caliber people in these positions, all of whom have willingly assisted me with answering queries from my residents. I, for one, never stop learning. Councillor Scattergood is therefore right that it comes down to understanding the process, and as I found personally, if in doubt, ask. There have been a lot of comments made in public regarding the proposed revised scheme of delegation that we are here to consider this evening. Ultimately, we cannot, as a district council, change the laws of the land regarding the issues we come up against with regard to planning. Applications can only be refused on the grounds as set out in law. We cannot change the laws themselves. It is a process that is at times very difficult to understand, despite being a set process, albeit a very complex one at that. Planning applications can be a very sore subject. They must go somewhere, so will upset somebody wherever that may be. Frustratingly, no amount of local knowledge can currently affect the outcome of a planning application, such as when residents can evidence that infrastructure is not fit for purpose, or proposed plans appear to be overdevelopment of an area. Where local services are already oversubscribed, a new development cannot be requested to contribute towards improving these because the problems already exist. Instead, the new development is simply free to add fuel to the fires and make them worse. There's nothing we can do if statutory consultees decline to enforce their powers or leave existing issues in crisis, which are then left to decline further with no hope of improving them, having no right to any contribution from developers. That's why I agree with Councillor Spray's comment earlier this evening that development should be infrastructure first instead of tacking onto existing settlements with stretched resources, as will now be the case. Whilst I welcome the engagement forums, it must, however, be remembered that there are a few wards which are unparished, which makes me and my district colleagues the lowest form of representation for these areas. With the system as it is, I think what does upset residents is that the process becomes unbalanced when an applicant can easily appeal a refusal, whereas an objector cannot appeal a decision to grant in the same way by, for example, stating the planning ground with evidence on which it should be reconsidered. This is a national problem, Madam Chairman, not just local to the Braintree district, which, where we are the public face, unfairly gives the planning process at our level grief over something for which we are not responsible for creating. We are simply tasked with its implementation, whether we agree with it or not. Displeasure and suggestions for changes therefore need to be directed at central government, not this council. What I hope will happen with the proposed revised scheme of delegation is the service we give is streamlined to ensure best value and make it the best we can with the resources we have, but everyone must understand that it will not affect the ultimate outcome of any application, with these remaining within existing legal parameters, as they always have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, firstly, just wanted to confirm my support for the recommendations of this review. I found Councillor Scattergood's comments very insightful, and I can only echo what Councillor Hensman has just mentioned. I do have some concern with the use of the phrase minor applications, which appears quite a number of times in the review. Could I have some clarification on it, on precisely what that means? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowers, I have next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome this. This review of the scheme of delegation has been a long time in the offing, and it's great to see it's finally come to fruition. And I compliment Chris Padgett and the planning department on all the work that's gone involved with this. We had a good debate at planning committee around this, with a lot of views expressed, and one way and the other, and to try and shape this as best we can. And it's good that obviously it's gone out to consultation as well. I don't believe myself that this waters down at all any local involvement. I think that has always been there and always will be there, and it's an important part of the process and always will be, especially at planning committee. I also would urge members to familiarise themselves with the call-in procedure, because that is a very important part of the planning process. And as well as, when I say familiarise, also be aware of what are planning reasons, because when members are calling in planning applications, it does have to be on planning reasons. So I'd urge members to familiarise themselves with that as well. The only other thing I'd like to say is that I do look forward to more information coming to do with the members forum, because I appreciate, like Councillor Spray said earlier, it is new to this authority and something that we haven't done before, though I appreciate it does happen in other areas and that. So I do welcome the more information when that comes before us, but happy to support. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Members, we're operating within a broken national planning system where 70% of local planning authorities like us have no up-to-date local plan. And with the possible future planning reforms that will take planning decisions further away from local control. Now, against such a background, we in Braintree District, I think, as a planning committee, performed tolerably well. The planning committee isn't demonstrably under significant pressure from volume of applications. That can be seen from the size of our agendas. The number of applications reported to committee is not excessive, and I don't think that can be in any way used as an argument for change. The real pressure appears to be at the chair's briefing stage, and the proposals before us tonight would increase and not diminish that workload, with increased gatekeeping responsibilities for the already overworked chair and vice chair, for whom I have the greatest regard. Now, the committee already gives long and considered attention to large, detailed, complex planning applications. Where is the evidence that the current system of delegation has not enabled the planning committee to give proper concern to these major applications? I would suggest there is no such evidence. Only 8% has been said of applications come to committee. That would seem acceptable for a large rural district like ours. I see the current scheme of delegation as fit for purpose, and I doubt anyway that the reduction of another couple of percent on those items that were delegated would release significant resources and increase capacity in the way argued. I don't see it. Why? Because the current capacity and the current scheme now easily meets government and BDC performance targets, which again, if we're meeting and exceeding targets, why the need for change? Now, I can understand our officers' concern, and I have the highest regard for them, that time spent in reporting, in writing reports for members that may not be used, it is indeed time wasted, but it surely should not be the main driver in reforming our system of delegation. However, and perhaps unusually, my greatest reservation is around the proposed members' forum. Our whole local plan setup selects the sites on which we as a council would prefer to see a development take place in order to meet the quantum of development that's handed down to us from central government. Now, the intention is to allow presentation of unallocated speculative sites to the forum. And I see that as a backdoor to enable them to present their proposal to members and officers. It appears to me that this undermines, even conflicts with our local plan system. Am I going to sit down with Gladman and discuss their proposals? I think not. Public perception is that the planning process is already weighted in favour of landowners, developers and volume house builders. And I'm very much afraid that these proposals will do nothing to challenge that perception. And I shall vote against the substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Radley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree that we should look at ways of improving efficiency, but not at all cost, not at any cost. I agree that the scheme should be reviewed, but there are many reservations that these proposals are actually the right way of achieving that. There are many good comments and concerns raised in the consultation, which have been answered but not addressed in the proposals. The proposals seek to focus more time and resource on larger developments, but at the expense of smaller applications, which could be significant to a village or even to some locations in a town. It removes the parish council right of referral to their objections to the planning committee and places too much in the hands of the chair and the vice chair. The members' forum sounds a good idea, but there are, as Councillor Mann articulated, many potential issues with this, and particularly in the arena of allowing speculative developments to come to this forum for discussion. I agree with the improving the efficiency of this, but these proposals sacrifice too much influence and focus too much on bigger applications. If there is a problem with the efficiency of the interface between town councils and the planning authority, then I suggest that we actually focus on trying to improve that interface, but not in the way as proposed. When I look at the performance of determining planning applications, I find that the performance has improved in the last, each of the past 5 quarters and is above the government and BDC targets. So for that reason, there is no valid reason for change of this scheme to improve further the targets. They're already ahead of where they need to be. So for all of those reasons, I cannot support this motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Radley. Now I have nobody else who wants to say anything, but I'm going to ask Councillor Mrs. Spray, as the proposer of the motion, to reply to these speeches. And I'm sure you don't really need reminding that you should confine your reply to previous speakers and shouldn't introduce any new matters. So Councillor Mrs. Spray, please.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And I appreciate everyone giving their comments. Councillor Abbott made a number of points. I'll address just one or two of them. The delegation rate, he says, is not low at 92%. No, it's true, but it's low on the table in comparison with our partner authorities in Essex. And this is in no way intended to be a race to the top. This is not a table where we actually necessarily want to be number one or number two, but we do feel that there is room for improvement in delegating the very much smaller applications, and that we could easily be around the middle of the table without suffering any detriment to the democratic planning process. I absolutely refute his final comment, which I think was that, we should be listening to parish councils and not ignoring them, which is what he says this report does. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't. We do listen. We will continue to listen. We've made a couple of amendments to this revised scheme of delegation following consultation responses from the parish councils. They will still have every ability to comment, to be listened to. And I'll pick up the point that a few other members made, which is that there is still every opportunity for those small applications to still come before the committee. Councillor Parker, thank you very much for your comments. With regards to any potential changes that the government's planning white paper might make, yes, of course, we recognise there may well be changes to the planning process. I would guess that if this scheme of delegation is approved tonight, that it will probably be fully operational around early next spring, probably around March or April, before the members forum and so on is fully up and running. And I would like to see the scheme embedded for, I would think, 12 months, and then I will be very happy to review it. So we would be looking at early 2022, but I absolutely accept that it will need a review. Councillor Hensman, really good comments, and I understand from a conversation I had with Councillor Hensman recently that he's actually logged on and watched every single planning committee since we've been running them virtually, which we've been doing for quite some months. And I absolutely commend him for that. I think that shows some considerable stamina, actually. He is absolutely right. Planning is a complex matter. It's not straightforward. And quite often, if you're not a planning officer or you're not on the planning committee and have had a lot of training, which we've all had, you struggle to see why one application is refused and another is granted when they appear to be identical. There will always be some differences, sometimes quite subtle, which makes the difference. But I agree, it's not easy to see. And I thank him for his comments, very nice comments about the officers and about me. Councillor Pritchard, the phrase minor applications, yeah, I can see that this might arise some disquiet because it might give the appearance that what is minor in planning terms is also minor for a small application for a couple of homes on the edge of a village. And that's actually not the case. Both the officers and the chair and vice chair of the planning committee are very sensitive to this point, and they do take this into account when they are making decisions or referring applications to committee. Minor is actually a nationally recognised term. For performance statistics, the government categorised planning applications as major, minor and other, and any applications for less than 10 dwellings or with floor space of less than 1,000 square metres are defined as minor. So it isn't some sort of arbitrary description that this planning authority has come up with. And it does not in any way mean that minor applications as they're categorised are regarded as unimportant, not at all. Councillor Bowers, thank you for your support and for contributing to the debate. And I absolutely agree that members would be advised to perhaps familiarise themselves with the call-in process, but as he said, more importantly, what are actual planning reasons for objecting to or supporting an application. Councillor Mann, I have the most enormous respect for Councillor Mann, who has been on the, well, been a councillor for a long time and on the planning committee and involved with planning committee for a good many more years than I have. And I always listen very carefully to any points he makes. Yes, he's quite right, actually. And that was also, I think, mentioned by Councillor Radley, that the planning, the development team are making their targets at the moment, both government and BDC set targets. However, it's a constant battle to do this. And quite often it is reliant on an officer going back to a developer and asking for an extension of time in order to get an application thoroughly scrutinised and brought to committee. Now, if those extensions of time aren't given, then the applicant can go straight to appeal to an inspector for non-determination, which does happen. So they are quite reliant on that at the moment. There are also mutterings from the government that these extensions of time may be something that they will stop local authorities being able to do in the future, probably the quite near future. So we might not have that sort of backstop to rely on. And the applications that are coming forward are increasingly complex and large. And this is just about giving the members of the planning committee the opportunity, and officers as well, to properly scrutinise all those applications and delegate a few more of the much more straightforward minor applications. I understand his concerns around the forum. It will be extremely well governed and minuted, and it will be webcast, and there is absolutely no intention that members will predetermine in any way. We will need to be extremely careful about that. Councillor Radley, I think I've probably covered your points, except that you're saying it will reduce the right of referral of parish councils to bring applications to committee. No, it won't happen, because where the three triggers are met, and the chair and vice chair will consider those applications, they have considerable knowledge of the district and what is important and significant, and there is every chance that those applications will come to committee. I think, and I hope, that I have covered everybody's points, Chairman. So I think I will leave it there. And as I said before, I recommend the decisions to Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Spray, and all members too. So I'm going to now proceed to the vote. The recommendations as set out on page 9 of your agendas have been moved and seconded, and we'll now be conducting the votes by way of a roll call, and I'll hand over to the Chief Executive, Andy Wright. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the vote on the scheme of delegation for planning. Councillor Abbott?
Against.
Councillor Bohr?
For.
Councillor Bebb?
For.
Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Butland?
For.
Councillor Coleridge?
For.
Councillor Courtauld?
For.
Councillor Mrs. Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Dervish?
For.
Councillor Everard?
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Garrett?
For.
Councillor Hensman?
For.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Hume?
Against.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mrs. Kilmartin?
Abstain.
Councillor Mann?
Against.
Councillor McCardle?
For.
Councillor McKee,
For.
Councillor Monday,
For.
Councillor Mrs Parker,
For.
Councillor Mrs Pell,
Against.
Councillor Pritchard,
For.
Councillor Radley,
Against.
Councillor Ritchie,
For.
Councillor Rose,
For.
Councillor Mrs Sandham,
Against.
Councillor Miss Santamoro,
For.
Councillor Mrs Scattergood,
For.
Councillor Mrs Smith,
For.
Councillor Swear,
For.
Councillor Mrs Spray,
For.
Councillor Tattersley,
For.
Councillor Thorogood,
Against.
Councillor Unsworth,
Against.
Councillor Van Dulken,
For.
Councillor Wallace,
For.
Councillor Mrs Walters,
For.
Councillor Miss Weeks,
Against.
Councillor Mrs Wilson,
For.
Councillor Wrench,
For.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, members. There are 31 for, and so I now say that the recommendations have been approved. Thank you very much. I've just been handed a note. We need to readmit Councillor Hicks to the meeting. We do that now?
We are,
Yes.
Chairman.
Tell me when you have. Before we proceed to item 9.
Chairman, I'm just waiting for confirmation for Councillor Hicks to be in the meeting. At the moment, it's still saying that he's joining. You just bear with me for one moment, please, members.
Well, can we carry on if he's gone out to the fish and chip shop or something?
It is his connection to the meeting, Chairman. At the moment, it's showing that it is joining. Mr. Councillor Hicks was held in the meeting room for quite some time, so I will keep an eye on it if you wish to proceed. In the meantime, can I just ask for members to turn their microphones off if they are not due to speak, please? Thank you.
Right, well, I'm proceeding, yes? Good. This is agenda item 9, and this is the statement of the licensing policy of 2021 to 2026. This item is set out on pages 75 to 102 of your agendas. I'd like to invite Councillor John Bohr, who's the chairman of the licensing committee, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations set out on page 75 of the agenda. Councillor Bohr?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, pleased to introduce this. The Council has a legal requirement under the Licensing Act 2003 to prepare and publish a statement of its licensing policy at least every 5 years. The new policy must be published by the 7th of January 2021 to comply. The policy document, as it's written, is based upon the Essex Authority's generic framework, which sets out what should be included and how. This was presented in its draft form to the licensing committee on 2 occasions. And after the first occasion, there was a 12-week public consultation with all the consultees. Must be noted that there are no new legislative changes, initiatives or special policies that have been introduced since the previous statement of policy. And the policy has, as I say, been before licensing committee twice, but with only minor amendments being made. The licensing committee recommends approval to full council, allowing for a 7th January implementation. I would say just that this has been substantially rewritten to become a concise, easily readable document. And quite a lot of work has gone into that, together with the consultations. Excellent work by the officers. So I move that recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Bore. Members, Councillor Bore has moved the recommendations set out on page 75 of the agenda. So can I now have a seconder, please? Thank
Yes,
you.
I wish to second that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Then now, do any members wish to speak on this item? If you do, then please indicate by the chat function. And I'll take each member in turn as they appear on my screen, and where necessary we'll alternate between the different groups to ensure a balanced and fair debate. So now I'm not actually seeing any members. I'm not. No one is wishing to speak on this. So what I'm going to do is ask Councillor Rose if he'd like to speak now, since you chose not to before, but now I suggest you might.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just that we have to adopt a statement of licensing policy every 5 years. And the Council's current statement of licence was adopted and came into effect in January 2016. And this new statement of licensing policy will be for the next 5 years, and it needs to be adopted by 2021. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bore, do you need to say anything else? Because
No,
otherwise I'm going to move to a
nothing to
vote
add,
otherwise. Sorry? Thank you very much. Then I'm going to move to a vote. I'll now proceed to that. The recommendation is set out on page 75 of the agenda. It's been moved and it's been seconded, and we'll conduct the votes by way of the roll call again. And I'll hand over once more to Chief Executive Andy Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll move straight to the vote then on the Statement of Licensing Policy 21 to 26. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Bore?
For.
Councillor Bebb?
For.
Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Butland?
For.
Councillor Coleridge?
For.
Councillor Courtauld?
For.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Dervish?
For.
Councillor Everard?
For.
Councillor Garrod?
For.
Councillor Hensman?
For.
Councillor Hicks?
For.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Hume?
For.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mrs Kilmartin?
For.
Councillor Mann?
For.
Councillor McArdle? Councillor McArdle? Are you muted, Councillor McArdle?
For.
Thank you.
No.
Councillor McKee?
For.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Mrs Parker?
For.
Councillor Mrs Pell?
For.
Councillor Pritchard?
For.
Councillor Radley?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
For.
Councillor Rose?
For.
Councillor Mrs Sandham?
For.
Councillor Miss Santamoro?
For.
Councillor Mrs Scattergood?
For.
Councillor Mrs Smith?
For.
Councillor Swear?
For.
Councillor Mrs Spray?
For.
Councillor Tattersley?
For.
Councillor Thorogood?
Abstain, please.
Councillor Unsworth?
Abstain, please.
Councillor Van Dolken?
For.
Councillor Wallace?
For.
Councillor Mrs Walters?
For.
Councillor Miss Weeks?
For.
Councillor Mrs Wilson?
For.
Councillor Wrench?
For.
Councillor Wright?
For.
Thank you, members.
So thank you very much. There were 42 members for this recommendation. So the recommendation has been approved. Thank you, Councillor Bore and members. Then we're now going on to item 10 on your agenda, which is the recommendation from Cabinet of the 23rd of November 2020, Council Tax Collection Funds Surplus. Allocation to town and parish councils. Very good. This item is set out on pages 103 to 105 of the agenda. And I'd like to invite Councillor David Bebb, who's the Cabinet Minister for Finance, the Cabinet member, not necessarily the Minister, the member for Finance and Performance, to introduce the report and to move the recommendation set out on page 105 of your agendas. Councillor Bebb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm going to cut to the quick on this one. We will see we're well on now with setting the budget with our last cabinet meeting on the 23rd of November. We made some recommendations, one of which comes to us tonight at the full council, and that is of the total of the £170,882 left in the council tax collections fund, that we should now attribute of that a proportion of 33,640 to town and parish councils, as we've done in the past. Now, we don't have to do this, but we always have, and I believe that we're the only council that actually is generous in doing just this to help our town and parish councils. So that is the recommendation, Madam Chairman, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. Councillor Bebb has moved the recommendation. Can I please have a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
If necessary, yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So now, do any members wish to speak on this item? If you do, please indicate by the chat function. I'm not seeing any yet. I'll take each member in turn as they appear on my screen, and where necessary, we'll alternate between the different groups so that I can ensure a balanced and a fair debate. I'm not seeing anybody. So I'm not. So, Councillor Butland, as you seconded this recommendation, reserving your right to speak and haven't spoken, would you like to now?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right. So that's that. No councillors wish to speak, and I'm going to proceed with the vote. This is going to happen by way of the roll call. So here comes Andy Wright again.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the vote on the budget recommendations from Cabinet. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Bore?
For.
Councillor Bebb?
For.
Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Butland?
For.
Councillor Coleridge?
For.
Councillor Courtauld?
For.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Dervish?
For.
Councillor Everard?
For.
Councillor Mrs Garrod?
For.
Councillor Hensman?
For.
Councillor Hicks?
For.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Hume?
For.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mrs Kilmartin?
For.
Councillor Mann?
For.
Councillor McCardle?
For.
Councillor McKee?
For.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Mrs Parker?
For.
Councillor Mrs Pell?
For.
Councillor Pritchard?
For.
Councillor Radley?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
For.
Councillor Rose?
For.
Councillor Mrs Sandham?
For.
Councillor Miss Santamoro?
For.
Councillor Mrs Scattergood?
For.
Councillor Mrs Smith?
For.
Councillor Swear?
For.
Councillor Mrs Spray?
For.
Councillor Tattersley?
For.
Councillor Thorogood?
For.
Councillor Unsworth?
For.
Councillor Van Dulken?
For.
Councillor Wallace?
4.
Councillor Mrs Walters,
4.
Councillor Miss Weeks,
4.
Councillor Mrs Wilson,
Sorry. 4.
thank you. Councillor Wrench,
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
Thank you, members.
Well, members, I can confirm, even I can count, that is unanimous. The recommendations have been approved. Thank you very much, Councillor Bebb and everyone. And we're now going to proceed to item 11, which is the recommendation from Community Development Group, the 28th of October 2020, the scrutiny review into community woodlands. This item is set out on pages 106 to 117 of your agendas, and members are reminded that this report is for noting before being referred to the Cabinet. Members are entitled to speak on this item before I seek your agreement, and silence in this case will be assent. No roll call, silence. I would now like to invite Councillor Mrs Diana Garrett, who's Chairman of the Community Development Group, to introduce this report. Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Community Development Group held a scrutiny review into community woodlands. The review included analysis into the background of community woodlands, both current and past examples, and the successes and challenges that had arisen. We identified policies and criteria that the Council holds, including the current tree strategy, and discussed the impact on climate emissions and other ecological benefits. We also discussed both the costs associated with maintenance and the benefits to the community, whilst ensuring that there was no duplication of work being undertaken by the Climate Change Working Group. I would like to convey my thanks to Sean Taylor, the Landscape Services team, and Mr Barry Fleet of the Witham Tree Group for their valued contribution to the scrutiny review. The group identified 13 recommendations arising from the review, and these are set out in the agenda. I therefore request that the Council notes the Community Development Group's review report into community woodlands, and that the report be referred to Cabinet to receive and respond to the recommendations which are set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garrett. So now, do any members wish to speak on this item? If you wish to speak, please use the chat function, and I'll take each member in turn as they appear, and where necessary, we'll alternate between the different groups to ensure a balanced and fair debate. I have one at the moment, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I generally welcome this report, but if I could make a few suggestions for when it goes to Cabinet.
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
I raised this issue about the high-pitched scream from Councillor Abbott on your chat function early, so as not to disturb your meeting. But the response from Councillor Abbott, he dismissed it out of hand with no offer to contact others or carry out an investigation. The sound is at such a pitch that it makes me feel nauseous, and I think he should take whatever action he can to try and stop it.
Well, Madam Chairman, I've made strenuous efforts to deal with it, as officers will confirm. I've been talking to officers on private communication and asking them if they can help. If Councillor Tassett is going to take that attitude,
Councillor Abbott, we've lost connection to you. Have you switched your microphone off in error? Chairman, it appears that Councillor Abbott has left the meeting. I cannot find him on the list of participants.
Right, so I am, unless Councillor Abbott returns, I am giving up on Councillor Abbott, and I have no one else who wishes to speak. So I am going to proceed with this item. It's for noting only, and I'll take silence as an agreement. So do I take it that the report has been noted then, members?
Madam
Yes.
Chairman, it's normal for the Cabinet member to respond and accept the report.
I have not got that down here. Did you want to say something, Councillor Schmidt? You can.
No, it's just normal convention just for the Cabinet member to thank the committee for, in their case, their diligent work on the wonderful subject of trees, and I look forward to responding in due course.
All right. No, thank you very much. But we are now going, I am already taking that silence has occurred, and I am taking that as agreement. So do I take it? I do take it that the report has been noted. Thank you very much, Councillor Garrett. We're now going to, and the members who kept silence, we're now going to proceed to item 12, which is the recommendation from Community Development Group on the 28th of October 2020. It was a scrutiny review into vaccinations. Now, this item is set out on page 118 to 122 of the agenda, and members are reminded again, this report is again for noting before being referred to Cabinet. You are entitled to speak on this item before I seek your agreement, and silence will be your consent. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Mrs. Garrett, Chairman of the Community Development Group, to introduce this report. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Community Development Group held a scrutiny review into vaccinations in the Braintree district in response to a national movement to increase the uptake of childhood vaccinations, particularly for diseases such as measles and rubella. The group identified who is responsible for managing and overseeing the vaccination programme to see what vaccinations and diseases are covered by the normal programme. We looked at many facts and figures, and crucially, we analysed the rates of vaccination in comparison to Essex and the national averages. The data provided indicated that the level of vaccinations uptake in the Braintree district were in alignment with the rates for Mid-Essex, which is generally amongst the highest in the country. The group agreed that the data was both positive and reassuring for the district, as it indicated that the World Health Organisation's target of 95% was being achieved across most areas, and the district did not appear to have any major issues regarding rates of vaccination uptake. We were satisfied that there did not appear to be any major issues regarding vaccination uptake, and therefore concluded that there was no scope to make any recommendations to the Cabinet or any of its partners as a result of our findings. I would like to convey my thanks to Dr. Mike Dougherty, Director of Wellbeing for Public Health and Communities at Essex County Council, and the clinical leads and officers of NHS England, East of England branch. I therefore request that the Council notes the Community Development Group's review report and look forward to receiving a response from the Cabinet member in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, do any members want to speak on this item? If you do, there's a chat function. I do have Councillor Tattersley has come up, and I'm presuming that it's on this scrutiny review, Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, it is. I was grateful for the report, and of course it says that subsequently it was agreed that there was no further scope to make any recommendations to the council. I'd like to suggest that the group considers reconvening to have a look at the way in which the COVID vaccines are being rolled out across the district, whether there are any issues about location, the way that people are being invited, and whether people are refusing the vaccine. I think it would be of interest to most of us, and it seems to fit in to the work they've already done on vaccinations.
Thank you very much. Now, no one else is indicating they want to speak, so I'm going to proceed. This report's for noting only, and I'll take silence as an agreement. Do I take it then, members, that the report has been noted?
Chairman, if I may, given that we enabled the Cabinet member for the matter at the last report, whether the Cabinet member in relation to this report might want to acknowledge.
Right. Would that Cabinet member like to say something now?
Yeah, this Cabinet member's already mentioned the point that I would have wanted to make.
Right there. Thank you very much, Councillor Tattersley. So I'm taking silence as an agreement. Yes, and I am. Thank you, Councillor Garrett, and members. We're now going to proceed to item 12, which is the recommendation from the Community Development Group of the 28th of October 2020, a scrutiny into, I think we've just done that one. This item 13 we're on now. It's getting late, members, isn't it? So item 13, recommendation from Partnership Development Group, 25th of November 2020, a scrutiny review into leisure provision and access to sport. Now this item is set out on pages 123 to 136 of your agendas. Members are reminded that this report is for noting before being referred to Cabinet. Members are entitled to speak on the item before I seek your agreement, and silence will be assent. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Mrs. Mary Cunningham, Chairman of the Partnership Development Group, to introduce this report. Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm very pleased to introduce this report. One of the key aims of the scrutiny review was to identify what the picture of sports provision was within the Braintree district and what it looked like. As part of the review into leisure provision and access to sport, the key questions we wanted to address were the picture of sports availability, what partnerships there are to support groups, what involvement does the council have directly through Fusion, what is the accessibility of facilities for groups, and what impact can the council have with partners to support groups. We looked at partnerships that the council are involved in with relation to leisure and sport provision. We received presentations from Joby Hum, the BDC Leisure and Heritage Manager, John Wood, Chairman of ABF, Active Braintree Foundation. We had presentations from Councillor Mrs. Anne Hooks, Chairman of Rain Parish Council, who spoke to us regarding provision in the village of Rain. Also officers from BDC Planning who gave insight into Section 106 contributions from new developments and how they relate to sports provision. A detailed survey was sent to parish and town councils to identify the sports provision in each particular ward. We are very grateful that a good number and a cross-section of parishes in the district responded, which was really helpful, and a good amount of information was uncovered. We had some excellent responses during these fact-finding meetings and are very grateful to those who contributed. We identified that there is a lot on offer, and it's a case of communicating what's available and communicating well. And I think it's important to remember, or it was recognised that it was important to remember that as members, we play a significant role in the communication of what's going on in our wards and communities. Finally, I'd like to offer my thanks to all those who contributed to our evidence gathering, the members of the committee who engaged with such great enthusiasm, and to the officers, especially Jessica Mann, who sourced our contributors, created an excellent survey for the parish councils and town councils, and prepared the report before you tonight. There are 7 recommendations within the report. I move the recommended decision as set out on page 123 of the council agenda, which requires council to note the contents of the report and that the report before you is referred to Cabinet for a response. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunningham. I see that Councillor Parker would like to speak on this item. If anyone else wishes to speak, please indicate by the chat function, and I'll take each member in turn as they appear on the screen. And let's go for Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for that excellent report. It's obviously been a very, very interesting topic and some very good recommendations. Just in relation to recommendation 1, which is to do with planning policy, I wonder whether the portfolio holder could consider thinking about facilities for older children in planning policy terms. There's lots of attention focused on providing play equipment, etc., for younger children, but I sometimes think older children can be overlooked. So I wonder whether that could be, if portfolio holder could consider that when this report has been considered at Cabinet. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. There is nobody else indicating to speak. And this report is for noting only. So I want members' agreement, and I'm going to take, we're going to do Cabinet member again. Yes. So would the Cabinet member
Madam Chairman, I think Councillor Dervish was
I
raising
haven't
her
got
hand.
anything up. Oh, Councillor Dervish has just come up. So do be quick when you want to grab my attention. Okay,
Sorry.
Councillor Dervish.
Sorry, I do apologise. It was just on the back of Councillor Parker's comments as well.
about the older children and also the disabled facilities for children as well. But thank you. That's a really good report, Councillor Cunningham. Thank you very much.
That's that. Cabinet member?
Yeah, just to say, Councillor Parker makes this case quite regularly, and I think it would be foolish to dismiss it. I will take care to include that in the report that goes to Cabinet.
All right, thank you very much. So now this is for noting only, and I will take silence as agreement before I say something else. Do I take it then, members, that you have noted the report? Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Cunningham. Members, before we proceed to item 14, we've got to talk about the time. So now I have to ask you to pause and say whether you would like to extend for some time for this item. We normally allow an hour, but as we do not wish to continue this meeting, if we possibly can, past the allocated 3 hours. So do I have your assent to extending the time, please?
Madam Chairman?
Yes?
I don't think there's any need to extend the time. We've got 20 minutes or so if members do have questions, and there's always the opportunity for members to write to portfolio holders if they have any other. I think 3 hours without a stop is quite long enough, so I would move that we continue until our designated finish time, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure everybody else is likely to agree with that. I'll take silence if you'd like to do that. Yes, good. There's lots of silence. So during this item, this is the Cabinet report, item 14 on your agenda. Yes? Cabinet report to full council. During this item, you can put questions to the leader relating to a portfolio, the powers and duties of the council or the district. But where a verbal response can't be given in response to questions, then a written response will be issued by the relevant Cabinet member. We'll just keep going with it and see how we go. And I'm going to invite Councillor Butland to introduce the report. Councillor Butland?
Yes, Madam Chairman, very briefly, the report summarises the activities of the Cabinet members since the last meeting. I would add, of course, that I have sent a number of correspondence to members, copies of letters that I've had from the Secretary of State, update on the COVID situation in Braintree, advice about e-scooters. So I'm very happy if there are any other issues that people would like more information on. If they either drop me a line or whatever, I will certainly ensure. I have endeavoured to try and keep our members as well informed, if not more informed, than most district councillors in the county.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would say that from the various chat discussions I've had with other people like myself in terms of chairman and mayors, we in Braintree are doing really brilliantly. I'm terribly proud of everything and all the organisation that the officers and the members and the Cabinet members and the leader put in. Really, you come across wonderfully well, and I praise whenever I'm on such a Zoom call. So now you can ask a question if you would like. I don't think I have any. Oh, Councillor Thorogood. Yes, please. Councillor Thorogood.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. Just one to Councillor Spray, please. I just want to say thank you for your reply to my question at October's full council meeting on site-wide strategies. I do wish to respond to your answer, but I wanted to wait until after this meeting's decision on the scheme of delegation. I'm still concerned about the opaque way that developers and planning officers seem to formulate site-wide strategies without community involvement. So I just wanted to say that I will get back to you with a follow-up written question on that. Thank you. And just to Councillor Schmidt, this year, through the summer and into the autumn, and even more recently, along the River Blackwater, there has been a problem with companies involved in the production of cricket bats and the burning of green leafy branches that they don't need for their production. and the smoke from the burning of these branches, which has caused a real problem, triggering asthma attacks in children in Kelvedon, smoking out houses in Fearing, and covering cars with ash in Coggeshall. Do you know if these cricket companies require a licence to burn these branches? Because that's what I've been told. Is that licence from BDC or the Environment Agency? And do you have a view on this? Because in the modern age, obviously, isn't there a better, less polluting way to dispose of these branches? Thank you.
Thank you. And would Councillor Schmidt like to answer that, or Councillor Butland?
Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know about licences, but any bonfires that are causing problems for people can immediately be reported to the Environmental Services, who will, if it's a serious one, look into it and take action. But I will check regarding the licensing part.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Answorth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of just very quick ones. I did have a few more, but in light of the time, I'll make those for next time. Just very quickly to Councillor Schmidt. The council agreed in September 2019, I think, to plant substantially more trees. Do we have any idea how many have been planted? And I refer members to BBC Countryfile Plant for Britain, and ask if we could possibly ring fence some of the revised climate change budget to allocate some funds for more community woodland. And have a quick question for the Cabinet Member for Planning with regard to Montessori School. You may remember that the Planning Permission was refused in July, in 23rd of June 2020, despite the concessions offered by the applicant. As ward member, I've worked with the owners and written to officers within a few weeks of that decision, outlining the requirements, as the officers said they would work with the school to find a new location. And as yet, they have had no communication or no feedback at all on this. And I wonder if you could give me an update. And finally, Councillor Schmidt, you offered me a written update at the last meeting on the burning waste at Stystead, which I've not had. And Councillor Ricky promised me an update on the questions posed in the last meeting. And again, I've not had that update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to respond? Chairman, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Spray here. Councillor Unsworth, yes, I'm well aware of the issue you're talking about. I will speak to officers and get a response for you.
Thanks. I'm happy with a written response on that.
Thank you very much. There's nobody else on my chat phone.
Good day.
Oh, yes, Councillor Schmidt. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On the first item about planting trees, the answer is the same as before. Tree planting continues through schools or groups, wherever. We don't have a lot of space left. We've been planting trees. It's been 10 years this year since Green Heart started and the big tree planting started. We have the Climate Change Committee. We have the group, the paper from the group that's just looked at community woodland. Something will happen, give us time. On the burning, I'm sorry about that. I know I've read something about it. I know we haven't had a response from, I think it was the Environment Agency, so I'll chase up on that one. And Madam Chairman, we're not going to go through logically, so if we have something to raise on our portfolio, please.
Yes. Yes. Did you want to raise something, Councillor Schmidt?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes, please do.
Certainly, you made reference at the beginning about the Playing Fields Awards. And of course, normally at this time of year, we're in the council chamber and we have several members of our wonderful grounds crew come along so that not only can I give them the certificates, but more importantly, it gives you as the council the opportunity to thank them for the wonderful work that they do and the embarrassment of riches that come from it. And so, of course, I naturally, as soon as the awards were given, personally thank the team for what they do. But with your blessing, I would like to write to them to say we're sorry we couldn't see them tonight in person, but to pass your thanks and gratitude on for the work that they do.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'll certainly send them a card as well. I think the least they deserve is a card from the chairman when we can't actually give them all their bling bongs and stuff, which line up their offices. We have a wonderful outdoor crew, absolutely wonderful. I always wave at them when I go by one of them. Now, Councillor Butland, would you like to say anything else? No.
No, Madam Chairman. I mean, I assume whether there are any more questions, but
no, there's nothing on my screens. So I think we're probably done. Thank you very much, everybody. And
apologies, Chairman. We have Councillor Everard who's come in with a late question, please.
Councillor Everard, you'll never catch that train if you come in this late. What can I do for you?
No, it's just I was pleased to see Cabinet Member Kevin Bowers and the new affordable housing development. I just wanted to, have we many more sites in line, please?
Can you take that?
Yes, so we have many more sites in line. The affordable housing programme is still where it was. There was obviously a delay during the initial stage of COVID, but we're back to where we were normally, where we were before, at the same speed as we were before, and we are, as it says in my report, we're on line for 200 completions this year. So there's no concerns at all, Councillor Everard, I can assure you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowers. Are there anybody else rushing to catch the train? No. So thank you very much, everybody. The written responses will be with you in due course from the relevant cabinet members. And I'm now going to move on to item 15. Yes. I've got something from Councillor John Ball.
Chairman, Councillor Ball is just notifying that his battery is at a low level, so he may need to leave the meeting early. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. Well, I'm now going to number 15, which is a list of public minutes published since the last council meeting. And can I please advise that there is an error in the report relating to the meeting of DDG and Local Plan Subcommittee on the 20th and the 22nd of October, respectively. Minutes of the DDG are not published as a public document, but they are available upon request, and the Local Plan Subcommittee was not held on that date. So in noting these errors, are there any matters members wish to raise arising from these published minutes as they're set out on page 149 of your agendas? Has anyone got something they want to talk to me about? No one. I like this business of silence. So the report is for noting only, and I will take silence as agreement. I'll listen once more. Do I take it that the report has been noted then, please? Yes. So the minutes are noted. Now this brings me then to the conclusion of this meeting. Doesn't feel very Christmassy. It doesn't feel, well, of course it's Advent at the moment, as everybody knows. There's most wonderful Advent music around the place, Radio 3 and elsewhere. Before we conclude our business, I want to thank members, the press and the public, and those watching on YouTube. We do get quite a lot on YouTube now, so hello and good night to all of you. And this is our last, would you believe this? This is our last meeting of full council for 2020, which in most people's opinions has been a pretty terrible year. But I therefore wish all members, officers, and those watching the YouTube a very nice Christmas to make up for it. And I'm certainly doing that for myself. And best wishes for a healthy new year. And may I say this, I didn't say it earlier, we are ordinary people on this council, and we are subject to ordinary illnesses and abnormal illnesses. And we do, to my certain knowledge, have 5 members fighting cancer at the moment, never mind all the other illnesses that are going. And so I wish all of these people fighting illnesses not just a healthy 2021, but one where you're ideas and wishes for yourself are answered, whatever those are. So with that in mind, we look forward to meeting up in February on full council. I'd like to thank the wonderful officers around me and Andy Wright. And none of this is possible without the IT department and without modern communications and without the people staffing them. And we are very fortunate in one way to live in a Zoom era, because otherwise with the pandemic we just wouldn't be able to meet at all. And again, we only meet because of the skills of the departments that put us all up here. So I therefore close the meeting at, would you believe, 10:10. Look at that. And I'm going to hand over to our excellent meeting facilitator to conclude the closure of this meeting. Good night, everybody, and have a very nice 2021 and a happy Christmas.
Good night, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Christmas to you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, members. Members, before I ask the webcasting officer to terminate the broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, please can I remind you that the Council retain performance data relating to your connections to this meeting in the event that we have a legal challenge. On behalf of the Chairman and officers in the Chamber, thank you very much for your attendance this evening, and I wish you a very good evening and a good night. Thank you, members. Webcasting officer, please can you confirm